This is the BBC.
Hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast from your friends at Radio 2, where we have jingles. Oh, this one's a little bit longer than normal. This is an ID daft pop ramp. So another 20 seconds. Anyway, at least it proves that this is a genuine BBC Radio 2 article. Welcome, it's a Confessions podcast. Okay. So this week's Concise Collection features Life's a Beach, Sew Your Own Way, Fixing a Hole, and the Chelsea Stagger. Here they all come. Dear Father Simon and the Parliament of Penitence, I seek forgiveness for something that happened in the year 5 BC, or before children, as it is known in our house. My wife and I were young, adventurous and not long married when we decided to go on holiday to a Spanish island, and like most other people we visited lots of lovely beaches. One of the beaches we discovered was particularly long and sandy, busy at one end, but as you got away from the bars and the sunglass sellers, it became gradually quieter. Towards the quiet end of the beach there was a sign that read, Zona Nudista.
Oh, really?
Now you don't have to hablar español. How would you say that?
Zona Nudista.
To understand that people beyond this point didn't have to bother with wearing a swimming costume. Or if you'd forgotten your swimming costume, this is where you went. It was quite useful.
Yes. Oh, good. I've forgotten my
It's a
costume.
public service. Anyway, there were many there who appeared to enjoy frolicking around in a state of undress. Anyway, one day, feeling a surge of youthful adventure, I suggested to my wife that it may be fun to try swimming in this style. i.e. without a cosy. We walk up to the beach past the sign. If you continue walking, the beach got even quieter. We could find a deserted spot and then do the zona nudista and run to the water where no one was looking. To my surprise, my wife agreed and we did just that. We both found it fun and a liberating experience. And something we were pleased to tick off our bucket list. Is that so, Pete? Is that so? A week later, we returned to the same beach on the last day of our holiday, and I suggested to my wife we could have a walk and go for a repeat swim. Well, again, to my surprise, my wife agreed, and even more surprising, she said she couldn't be bothered to walk all the way along to our secluded spot, and that it didn't matter if other nudista bathers were around, as we were in the nudista, or in the all-together. Why are you looking puzzled like that?
So, are they walking past other nudistas whilst they're fully clothed, or what? Or are they going?
No, it's very clear. Well, you go past the sign. That's the sign where you can go.
You have to take everything off at that point.
Okay, but if you keep on going, it gets really quiet and there's no one there.
Oh, right. Okay.
So the first one, they were all around the corner. There was no one there.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes.
But now they've just gone past the sign where it's okay to go. Okay. Hello.
They've built up their confidence.
That's exactly.
Coming straight off now.
That's exactly right. Anyway, we're in the nudista zone, so nobody would pay us any attention, so everything was fine. So as before, we de-roped, ran into the water, and that's fine. We'll leave that there. At the end of the swim, my wife walked out of the water first, whilst I continued to have one final splash around. Father Simon, stereotypes would often have you believe that the vast majority of people who use these beaches are German. However, as my wife returned to the beach, a middle-aged couple approached her and started making conversation. They must have heard us chatting and identified us as fellow British nudistas. I am generally a grumpy person, says Peter, and would have continued walking back to my towel. My wife, however, is just too nice and is incapable of doing this, so she had to stop and talk to these people. The couple looked intent on a very long conversation, and panic struck me. I knew I had to walk out of the water and go over to rescue my wife, but I couldn't face just standing there nudista without a towel or even my swimming shorts. Where would I put my hands if I had no pockets? Ultimately, how could I trust myself to maintain eye contact? Especially... No, not doing that bit. So, Simon, I did what any man would do. I moved down the shore and shuffled out of the water a good 30 feet away. My wife saw this and called me over, but I, back-turned, shouted, "We've left our camera and passports down the beach. I'd better go back and make sure they're okay. You follow on when you're ready. Bye!" I quickly scuttled off and hurriedly donned my shorts and sandy pants, rushing back down the beach to the safety of the non-nudista zone. It was a good 30 minutes later before my wife returned, looking furious and flustered. apparently they were the most talkative couple ever, and told her about similar beaches on the island that we must visit. It turned out that they lived only 10 minutes away from us in a nearby village, and they'd invited us over for a Nudist barbecue
What?
on our return home. Can you imagine anything worse? I mean, I can see the attraction. I can see, swimming. I can see the attraction in that. But what is the point of a nudist barbecue?
None.
You need an apron.
Supply your own
Okay.
gags.
Yes, that's exactly what you meant.
She only managed to get away from the talkative couple when another couple came over to talk to them. Imagine having to stand there completely nudista when you're talking to people you've never met. Anyway, I don't seek forgiveness from my wife, who's brought this up on every holiday we've had ever since and made me pay many times over, even though it was partly her fault for being too lazy to walk up the beach to the quiet section. Oh, really? But I seek forgiveness from the couple who, according to my wife, were very friendly and they just wanted to speak to some fellow British nudistas abroad. I also think I might have ignored them again about 3 months later at the local garden centre, though I can't be sure because they were clothed. And people really do look different when they have their clothes on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure that there are going to be many nudist beach confessions, but you never know. So basically, Peter's a coward. I mean, he saw that his wife just needed rescuing, but instead of that, he did the 30-foot detour, went round and left her to it, Sister Bobby.
Well, I think given the circumstance, actually, Peter did the right thing, because if he couldn't have held it together and he felt nervous, they would have known, and then everyone would have felt nervous, and then there would have been 6 people that felt nervous instead of him.
No, I think he's just
The thing is,
a coward.
you see, the wife, she said, let's just do it here. So she was much more confident maybe than he was. So it's fine. Peter, on this occasion, you are completely forgiven.
Okay, well, that's a good start.
I can certainly empathise with it. I remember in a previous life having to do a radio report from a nudist colony,
Really?
and yes, and having to furiously focus on people's noses.
Did you join into the spirit of things?
Not really. Not in fact.
do you
Not
mean,
at
not
all.
really? Not at all. Okay.
Not at all. I was fully clothed throughout, and so I can sympathise here that he didn't want to get into the whole sort of hello. This is totally normal, isn't it? Even though none of us have got our clothes on, it's not normal at all. So I am going to say I forgive. And yes, a nude barbecue sounds the worst thing ever. With all the burgers and the sausages spitting fat, the health and safety, surely.
I don't think we need to
I think so.
probe any further.
Probably not.
Dear sympathetic Simon, benevolent Bobby, and magnanimous or possibly malevolent Matt.
Correct.
I beg your forgiveness for an error that was born from a 16-year-old youth who was actually trying to do the right thing. Back in the 70s, I was sent to a well-known ladies' garments producer in Middlesex for summer work experience. When I arrived at the factory, as I had feared, I was the only male amongst approximately 50 women of different ages. I reported to the supervisor, a large Scottish lady. That's you, Phil.
This is going to be good.
A large Scottish lady with wild orange hair, a permanent frown. That sounds like your Jimmy wig that you've got downstairs. A permanent frown, scary green eyes, and a loud, growling voice, perfectly cast. That had obviously been developed thanks to smoking 60 a day and quite possibly chewing glass. We're going to call her Miriam. She started by telling me that she did not want to be a nursemaid to a work experience kid, and certainly not a boy like me. It seems that I'd basically just joined the real-life cast of the rag trade, and I was obviously facing 5 days of hell. I decided that I would try and win Miriam over, and therefore told her I was prepared to do anything if she'd just give me a chance. She grimaced and told me in her delicate Glaswegian tone, "Get me a brew!" Which I duly did. Well done, Neville. Imagine, if you can, a factory full of women and me, a rather naive 16-year-old boy. I was subjected to every cruel trick that they could think up. They put me to work on the night attire range, and they loved talking to me about cup sizes and support fabric, just about anything that could make a 16-year-old boy cringe and go bright red. However, I rode the jokes, stayed pleasant, and did everything they asked. Plus, I kept getting Miriam regular brews, as she seemed to survive solely on a diet of tea and cigarettes. After a few weeks, I could see that I was slowly winning Miriam and the other ladies over. That's because the one thing none of us had expected was that I was actually really good on the sewing machines. I progressed from simple seams to full-blown overlocking, and soon I was part of the production team on the new glamour two-piece negligee set. Whatever that is. Oh, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
At this stage, my only outstanding problems were the endless attempts to embarrass me and trying to understand Miriam's accent. I found that I was having to ask her to repeat herself 3 or 4 times whenever she told me to do something, and her temper was getting shorter and shorter. Then to the day in question, when I had just finished sewing a bright pink frill onto 250 negligees, and I asked Miriam it's like a 1970s sitcom, this is, and I asked Miriam what I should do next. She pointed at some smaller pink frill material and told me to sew it onto the corresponding 250 pieces of the set. Again, her accent had confused me, but I could sense that yet again I was being given a job primarily to embarrass me, and frankly I was too scared to ask again, so I went off and got on with the task. When finished the job, I took the frilly articles back to Miriam for her approval, but she looked at me first with horror, then anger. However, Miriam's gnarled face then softened and a smile formed. Then she exploded with a growling laugh, saying,
I said sew the frills in the cuff sets, not the gussets.
I said, sew the frills on the cuff sets,
Translate.
not the gussets.
Yes. There's subtitles.
Yeah. Not only was Miriam tickled pink, but she felt the need to share my faux pas with the whole factory, even stopping the production line to let everyone know. The image of 50 people pointing and laughing at me will haunt me forever, Father Simon. I'm not seeking forgiveness from Miriam, who I know heartily enjoyed not only my mistake, but also the many brews that I made her over those few days. Also, I'm not seeking forgiveness from the professional machinists who, after they stopped laughing, had to unpick 250 unnecessarily frilly undergarments. I'm not even asking forgiveness from the well-known garment producer, which has since gone into liquidation. However, I would ask forgiveness from all the local school kids that would have liked to get work experience at that factory and were probably denied the opportunity following my disastrous placement. And that's from Monty. Well, Monty, thank you very much indeed. Classic sitcom territory. Let's check in with Sister Bobby here. What do you say?
It is such a fabulous story. First of all, Monty, well done. Well done for sticking it. Well done for not running away in the first place. I can imagine it being really tricky. Also, what a great place for life lessons. Because if you end up marrying one, or you've got a little sister, or you've got cousins, you'll end up being the best male friend that you possibly could. Because you've got, you know how all that works. And that's great. There are very few boys like that
Familiar with a two-piece negligee set.
So well done. And also just well done for sticking at it. And Miriam, I have to say, I'm sure none of them minded, because you just gave them the biggest laugh, and they probably loved you as well. So nothing to be forgiven, really. It was, an honest, innocent mistake.
Brother Matthew.
I'm going to wager that's the first time that the words glamour two-piece negligee set have come on Radio 2.
Probably,
and
yeah.
I say about time too. I think this absolutely works fine, because everyone's fine at the end of it. I'm sure the gussets got sorted. I'm sure that all got dealt with in the end. And so everyone's fine. And well done to Miriam with her excellent accent. So well demonstrated by our producer Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Miriam, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Welcome.
Dear Father Simon and the Assembly of Absolution, my confession is for a dastardly deed that took place in the late 1970s in a long since demolished school in Swindon. It's now an academy. The school... Oh, it's not that demolished then, is it? Maybe they demolished some of it, and what was left...
They made an academy.
There you go. Recycling is what it is. The school had an infant school, a junior school and a senior school, and my friends and I were all aged around 14 and in the 3rd year of senior school in our last term. One day, whilst the boys were in their gardening class, different times, a teacher in our domestic science lesson, also different times, made an announcement that the infant school was short of lunchtime playground assistants, and would any of us senior girls like to help out the staff there? For some inexplicable reason, and one that put me off kids for the rest of my life, Jane, Carol, Jan and I all volunteered. Now, these were days when you either went home for lunch and used the sound of the local railway works hooter to remind you of the time to get back to the school premises for afternoon lessons.
This is different times, isn't
Very
it?
different times before the war. Or you stayed at school to partake of delicious school dinners. I think that's probably ironic. I don't know. Needless to say, we were all in the former group. We all went home for our food. However, by volunteering our assistance, we wouldn't have time to go home for lunch and carry out our very serious playground duties at the infant school. We really didn't fancy the school dinners, and anyway, waiting in a queue to be served wouldn't leave us enough time to go and supervise the little angels in the infant school what to do. So we asked for, and surprisingly were granted permission to bring in our own lunch packs, the only pupils in the entire school who were allowed to do so. But having given us permission to bring in a packed lunch, for some reason, unbeknownst to us, we were not allowed to join the kids partaking of their tasty school dinners in the dinner hall. So we had to find our own place to eat lunch. With all the classrooms locked over lunchtime, we decided to sit in our cloakroom to eat the lunch. Now, lovingly and hurriedly assembled by our respective mothers early that morning, we should say. When I say the cloakroom, I don't mean it's an American interpretation of cloakroom. I mean the large area where the entire female contingent of the senior school would hang their coats during the day. So each day for a few weeks, Jane, Carol, Janice and I would wolf down our edible offerings before obligingly trotting over to the infant school to carry out our supervisory duties, which regularly included wiping snotty noses, breaking up fights and rescuing the school rabbit, who was always in trouble.
Yeah.
Can't trust that rabbit. In the cloakroom, there were no bins for us to deposit our surplus lunch offerings, these being the days before compost bins and recycling became compulsory. However, in the ceiling of the cloakroom, there was a sizable hole. So for a few days, we had a competition to see who could succeed in not only lobbing our leftovers up the hole, but awarding extra marks if the crusts, cakes and cores stayed up in the ceiling. You can call it extra netball practice if you like. Well, I suppose there's an element of skill involved.
There is. Yeah.
The novelty of this soon wore off, so my friends and I came up with the idea of distributing our leftovers in the pockets of the coats hanging in the cloakroom. It all went into the pockets of our fellow pupils. Crusts of luncheon meat, tuna, opal fruit wrappers. How about that? Tuna or cheese sandwiches, marathon wrappers, orange peel, Aztec bar wrappers.
Oh, love them, yeah.
Do you remember those?
Yeah.
Different times, everyone.
Banana skins.
Yeah. Remember them?
All festering nicely until the kids put their hand in the pockets on their way home from school, or perhaps a little longer if the pockets were not utilised. So we were responsible for a complete mess. So Compassionate Cluster, which I don't, have you been called a Compassionate Cluster before?
No.
I think that's a new one. Need forgiveness not only from our fellow pupils who may have received an unwanted surprise in their pockets, but also from their parents who probably punished the kids for storing the rotting waste in their coats in the first place. Mind you, now I don't know if do you ever go through the school pockets, like the jacket pockets of your son?
Well, you have to, don't you? Because
What's this? How many crisp packets? How big is this bar of chocolate?
how long has that been there? Oh, no idea.
Let's not forget the school caretaker who may well have received the blame for the smell of decomposing debris coming from the girls' cloakroom for who knows how long after we left to go to senior high school, because there was all that compost that was up in the loft. Well, I suppose they were being creative, but however, it seems deeply irresponsible considering that they had been given this responsibility and they could have put it in their own pockets, but no, they decided to laden it into other people's. Sister Bobby looks cross now.
Well, Kay, I was thinking actually about that 1970s packed lunch, and I was thinking big tea round loaves that were a circular, white bread and a Texan bar.
No, a wagon wheel.
Oh, okay.
And a big one before they actually
got really small, yeah, I was thinking. So you're very lucky. It's interesting that no other person was allowed a packed lunch. I always thought,
a Tunnocks tea cake, you could have one of those.
Or a caramel bar, maybe, or a blue ribbon. Anyway, moving on. Kay, I'm not going to forgive, because it's very simple, that you ruined people's coats, and that's maybe all they could afford, and they need cleaning and things like that. So no on that count. Also, the ripple effect of this is some of those children might have blamed other people or thought they were being bullied by someone instead. So no, Kay, it was completely an unnecessary jape that actually had no real effect. So
And on Fridays, a soft centre spangle. Only one, because
soft-scented.
a soft centre
Just
spangle.
one
Yes,
spangle.
because otherwise it would be indulgent.
Really?
And we don't want to pamper the kids.
Puritan school again, was it?
Yeah, that's
Goodness
right.
me.
Brother Matthew.
Well, clearly this is different times, not only in the category of chocolate bars, but also attitude to waste. It's far more enlightened times now. We obviously recycle and use bins. Back in the 70s, throw it anywhere.
Well, they
I don't
did, but
care.
they didn't.
I'm putting it in a hole. I don't care. I'm putting it in people's pockets. La 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 la. Watch me with no regard for my fellow man. So I'm going to say, haven't we come a long way? Well done, everyone. So definitely forgiven to the human race for progressing from the 1970s.
I think that because you share an office with the newsreader, I think if, say, for example, Claire Rannick leaves some rubbish lying around, not that she would, you could leave all her crisp packets in Jason Kay's jacket.
I think, yes, there's an idea.
That would be quite
Yes.
funny. Well, that would be a wizard prank.
Yes, I'm sure that would go down very well. Yes.
Dear Juggernauts of Justice, my confession harks back to Sunday, the 4th of October, 1998. I remember the exact date because I spent a lovely day at my in-laws. I'd bought my wife a micro-lighting experience for Christmas, which, by a feat of planning, fell on the same day as a Liverpool-Chelsea game. So I stayed at my in-laws to watch this on their satellite television, and my two little girls, aged 7 and 3, had a happy day with plenty of fresh air, watching their mum flying and being spoilt rotten as usual by their grandparents. All in a perfect family Sunday. The drama didn't start until we got home later in the evening. Now, we live on a small estate in a small close with several other very similar adjacent but smaller closes. We arrived home fairly late considering it was a school and work day, but the kids had slept in the car all the way home and they were safely transferred to bed. They were asleep by 11ish. My wife and I had a cup of tea before settling down for the night. We were just nodding off when we heard a bit of a noise in our back garden. Now, we got a lot of hedgehogs and sometimes foxes and maybe frogs taking a detour through our garden at night, but this sounded a little heavier and more suspicious than urban wildlife invaders. I got out of bed with nothing on but a concerned look on my face and went to the window. Looking down, I saw a man on my patio. He looked a bit lost. Even so, I felt it my duty as the head of the family to go on the offensive. Oi!
Here we go.
I shout. Get off my garden!
Get out!
Exactly. That's precisely what I said and how I said it. The man looked up, a little distracted, and answered in a slightly slurred voice, "Is Dave there?" "No, there is no Dave in this house. Get out of my garden," I barked back. "What have you done with Big D then?" says the man on the patio. "I have no idea who that is," I'm replying. "Please leave my garden. Get out." "Who lives next door?" the guy shouts back. "There's no one called Dave, no one called Davey, no one called Big D living at this address, and if you don't get off my garden and out of my patio, I'll call the police," I warn very sternly, even though I am naked. The man then replied, this time quite angrily, "If you do that, I'll knock your block off." Wow.
This has gone down a certain alley.
I made him sound like the ARP warden.
Yes.
Sorry about that. In the end, I figured out I'd better escort him off the premises, so I shouted at him to stay exactly where he was. I ran downstairs, followed by my wife. Obviously, I put on some clothes by this time. And when I pulled back the curtains, I found the man's face squashed against the window. His exertions in an effort to go over the fence had taken their toll, and he was taking a rest, squidged up against my patio doors. I banged on the window, told the man to move, then opened the door just enough to get out. I jumped out onto the patio as my wife slammed the door right behind me, and I heard her turn the key in the lock. "Right then, let's get you out of here," I said, just as I noticed he was wearing a Chelsea football top. What a surprise. Yeah. "Oh," I say, "Chelsea fan, are we?"
Excellent. It's that voice again.
"Good result for your boys this afternoon," I remarked, because I'd seen the match. The man in front of me then instantly turned from snarling drunk to soppy baby and started singing Suggs' seminal football opus, "Chelsea, Chelsea." Is that the tune?
It's Chelsea, isn't
He
it?
does about that anyway.
Yeah.
At the top of his voice. Now, by this time, I sensed neighbours peeping around their curtains in some perverse interest to see what would happen next. I put my arm around the drunk man. He's still singing. We staggered back up the path to the gate. I then bent down and unbolted the gate. When I turned back, he disappeared. It was dark, approaching midnight and all that, and he'd quite literally vanished into thin air until the strains of "Chelsea, Chelsea" were heard coming from my ankles. Turns out he'd fallen into my strawberry trough.
What?
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Those Chelsea fans,
That's definitely a euphemism.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to go and tend to my strawberry trough.
What is this strawberry?
Maybe
I
10
mean, obviously
minutes.
It's obviously a trough.
Let me think about it. What's the strawberry trough? Oh, I don't know.
Anyway.
Someone can ring in.
Classic Radio 2 confession anyway. Okay, so this Chelsea fan has fallen into the strawberry trough, and comically Father Simon could not extricate himself. Well, experiences you fall in a strawberry trough, you can never get out of it, ever. It was then I had a stroke of genius. Looking down at the drunk, rather portly man, stuck in a trough full of strawberries, chanting Chelsea songs, I said offhand, "Well, I have to say, I don't know who Dave is, but you do know Chelsea captain Dennis Wise lives just over there? I saw he came home a few hours ago." "You're kidding," he shouts. I know, I'm confusing the voice. Which house is it? Where? I then lead the man over the road to Dennis Wise's house, in inverted commas, and then, like unleashing a wild beast back into the wild, I watch him stumble down the path, still chanting, "Chelsea, Chelsea!" I then legged it as fast as I could, back down the back alley, into my garden, back into the house and up into bed. The last words I heard as I left this man in a complete stranger's front garden was, "Hello, is Dennis there? Does Dennis live here?" Well, obviously he doesn't. I had actually made that entire bit up. But I obviously need forgiveness, not from any of my immediate neighbours for all the noise and kerfuffle or disturbing their sleep. None of them had actually offered any help in what could have been a very difficult situation. But I do seek forgiveness from the real residents of Dennis Wise's house, whoever they are, to whom I left a very lost and loud drunken Chelsea supporter at midnight on this particular Sunday, which, as we know, was Sunday, the 4th of October,
1988.
1998, if you want to...
Doing so well, wasn't I?
Anyway, so I was... I don't know why do you think Nicholas told us about the fact he wasn't wearing anything at the beginning of the story? Because you might think, oh, well, it's obviously going to be relevant. And it turned out to be not relevant at all. Anyway, Sister Bobby.
But it is relevant, isn't it?
Is
because it's your vulnerability. There you are, with nothing
Yes.
or nothing to protect you from, being seen or, if something happens.
Or really being seen.
Yes.
I've got real problems with this. First of all, you should never, ever, ever go out and face the person. I really don't believe.
If you've got a strawberry trough, though, it gives you a certain sense of manliness.
No, it doesn't.
Look at my strawberry trough.
I was really concerned.
Have you got a trough like that? I think not. Run along.
And I understand the fact that his wife locked him out to protect herself from someone coming running back in.
Or just wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah, but also the thing is to me it was a ruse. I thought this guy is definitely a hoax. That's what you do, isn't it? You break into someone's house and when they catch you, you go, "Oh, I just thought it was Dave's, but I thought it was Dave living here." I just thought you were an idiot, Nicholas. Don't fall for that. But then on the other hand, when I did realise that, of course, you don't rob a house, do you, wearing a Chelsea t-shirt? You wear black, obviously. Surely.
You have stripes across your...
That's right.
And a bag of swag.
And a bag of swag. So
Yeah.
the other thing is, actually, in the interest of the guy who was drunk, you shouldn't have left him on his own. Because if he was genuinely drunk and not able to take care of himself,
You're
you
so
don't know what's
responsible.
happened.
Voice
you
of
just
reason
don't.
tonight.
You just don't leave
Yeah.
a drunk person to wander around by
If
themselves.
they've invaded your house, you probably would. Anyway, run along. Go and talk to
Not
Dennis
forgiven
Wise.
on many counts, Nicholas.
Novice.
Well, I'd say Nicholas's hedgehogs must have clogs on if they wake him up in the middle of the night, for a start.
Yes.
And obviously, Bobby, that was brilliant, because actually he could have been an Arsenal fan, burgling the house,
Would that have been better?
but wearing a Chelsea top, so they would only have looked for Chelsea fans.
I think you're overthinking this,
Yeah,
guys.
I get that's. This is the
Yeah.
yo-yo of a confession, as you might imagine, for me. And the fact that a wife locked him out, as you say, knowing there was a potential burglar. And that great line about just Big Dave will live here. That was a classic burglar's line.
Yeah.
But he did get his revenge, didn't he, by giving him to the neighbour, but waking them up. Oh, I don't know. Forgive him.
Thanks. Brother Matthew.
So, man turns up in a Chelsea top at inopportune moment. Was it John Terry?
Oh, very good.
There you go. Well done. I'm going to say definitely forgiven because, whoever Big D and Big Dave were, they all had it coming. So, yes, definitely forgiven. Well done.
Well, they were this week's confessions. A fine selection. Maybe it stirred something deep in the dark recesses of your soul. Confessions at bbc.co.uk if you want to join in. If you missed any of the shows in the week, you can catch up. Of course, you can go back online. You can download to your smartphone, tablet, using that BBC iPlayer radio app. What a lovely thing that is. On Monday, the Ready to Book Club superstar Paula Hawkins, you know, the girl on the train, she wrote that. She's got a brand new book. I suggested it should be called Girl in the Pond, but actually it's not. It's Into the Water. Albert Hammond dropped in on Tuesday, talk about his new album In Symphony with all his greatest hits plus added orchestras. On Wednesday, it was Phil Tufnell, former England cricketer, of course, now TV tart, popped in to talk about his new book, Tuffer's Cricketing Hall of Fame. Foodie Thursday, on the hottest day of the year so far, Nigel obviously going for a pork vindaloo instead of a salad. And if you made it to the end of last week's podcast, I suggested that you tweet, I'm ever so sorry, Mr. Ambassador, which some people went for, or I've got cheesy feet and I don't care. So let's mention Mark and Pippa and Norman and Chetna. That must be Chetna Mackin, I would think. All right, Chetna. Anyway, because loads of you did precisely that. This week's top secret code phrase is, me and my mama, my dad and my gran went off to Waterloo. Thanks. It's another long one. This is ID Supergrass Ramp, by the way. Thank you for downloading this podcast from Radio 2. There'll be another one in a fortnight. Thanks.
88 to 91 FM, BBC Radio.